My name's Alan. I'm Bruce's uncle. I've been lucky that I've been able to spend a lot of time with my nephew over the years. What we've heard here today is that Bruce liked muscle men. He liked guns, knives, swords, fishing, hunting, camping, family. If you look at the picture of Bruce over here with the 40-pound salmon, if you look at his haircut, it might remind you of a cartoon character from years earlier, 4 years earlier, called He-Man. That little muscle man he carried around in his pocket was He-Man. He loved He-Man. When he was 4 years old at Christmas time, he was given a He-Man sword by his parents. I could kill his parents for that. He ran all through the house yelling, "By the power of Grayskull!" And he struck down everything in that house. After about 3 hours of listening to that, you kind of got numb to it and you weren't really paying attention to it, when all of a sudden He-Man hops up on the chair I'm on and hits me across the face with this sword so hard I saw stars for a half hour. And at that point, I didn't know whether to break that sword, yell at his parents. But at that moment, I knew that he loved me so much that he included me in his game. Sorry. A year or two after that picture of Bruce, I was up fishing, pre-fishing at Lake Shasta for a Tournament of Champions tournament that I had qualified for. And Bruce and his father came up on the cutoff day and spent the night with me in my camper. In the morning, we loaded the boat on the trailer and we headed up to McLeod Reservoir to go trout fishing. All I had was bass fishing equipment. Bruce brought up all the trout fishing equipment. We get out on the lake, and lo and behold, Bruce forgot all the trout fishing equipment back in that gold Cherokee back at Lake Shasta. So all we had was bass fishing equipment. So we dug through all my tackle and pulled out these little 3.5-inch broken back Impalas, and we started trolling with a 150 horsepower motor. And the first fish, I believe, was caught by Big Bruce. I'll never forget, he was sitting there yanking on it. I think I got one. And I looked back there and I saw the biggest trout jump out of the water I think I'd ever seen in my life at that time. And I told Bruce, "Calm down, you got a big one." Well, we continued to catch big fish after big fish, probably catching somewhere in the neighborhood of 100, 120 fish over 5 pounds, which if anyone's a fisherman fishing for trout, that's amazing. Out on the lake, I'll never forget little Bruce was standing up front on my deck. That's a bass boat I had. So he's up on the top deck reeling in a big trout, little Bruce up there. And next to us is a wife and husband trolling along in their little aluminum boat. And the husband screaming at his wife, "If I had a boat like that, I'd be catching fish like that too. Shut up." It had nothing to do with the boat. Anyway, when it came to fishing, Bruce was very good at fishing. My dad used to tell me I could catch a limit of fish in a bucket of water. Bruce had the same curse. I'd take Bruce out, I'd take little Eve out, and my son Alan, we'd go out and we would catch hundreds of fish. And Bruce would always be right there one-on-one with me. But I have to be honest with you, little Eva outfished all of us 3-1. So Hawaii, Bruce and I had an opportunity to go to Hawaii for almost a year to work at Hickam Air Force Base on some top secret stuff. And when we got there, we were working with all of the local Hawaiians, and they weren't very happy to see us, because we're Hallies. And they didn't like us at all. And the first day, we had this huge Connex that was full of material, and we're running the pathway for this fiber optic cable throughout this gigantic building. And the guys had to all carry, there's no elevators out there. These are old historic buildings that were there when the island got bombed and attacked. You walk up the stairs and there's actually bullet holes through the stairs. Anyway, the guys had to carry these 4-inch metal, 10 feet long conduits to the wing that we'd be working on, which would be about 600 yards away from where we were at. And I'll never forget that first day. There was a line of technicians, 45 of them, picking up one of these things and carrying it off. Well, Bruce walked up and said, "Load me up." And he walked off with 4, 2 on each shoulder. Well, over the next year, I watched as the biggest of the Hawaiians tried their best to do 2 and couldn't. They couldn't get to the door. That's how strong Bruce was. During our time there, Bruce was talking about dieting and nutrition. That's what Bruce and I decided when we got to Hawaii. We were going to thin down, we were going to get ripped, we were going to get in shape. So we worked out, we went to work, we went to GNC, we tried every diet thing they had. Bruce came one day and said, "Try this, it's jet fuel." I said, "It's jet fuel?" "No, it's just called jet fuel." So I tried it. 3 days later, I got to sleep. But I did lose weight. So we'd be walking around the park or down at the beach, and all the girls would be checking Bruce out. He was much bigger and much more ripped than you see in that picture at that time. And I'd lean over to him and I'd say, "Don't look now, but I think those girls are checking me out." And he did a smile on his face. So after we got done with that project, we came back and we started doing surveys in California's prison system to install a fiber optic infrastructure inside the prison. So we had to verify the pathway, available pathway, and we had to go into the pods and pop panels and make sure that, you know, everything was there that we needed. Well, one of the prisons was the baddest of the bad, where they put everyone in there has killed somebody intentionally, and more than one person. But there was one particular pod in that prison that the guards didn't even like to go into, because the people in that pod were there because they're never getting out. They like hurting people. They've killed guards. Nobody wanted to go in there. None of our technicians wanted to go in. And Bruce looked over at me and said, "I'll go in if you'll go in." So I said, "All right." So if anyone's ever worked in a prison, you know you can't take very many tools. And if you don't have the same tools coming out that you had going in, you're in big trouble. The whole prison goes on lockdown. You may not be getting out. So anyway, we go in there with minimum tools, some security wrenches and things to get in there. And we're in this pod and we're doing our survey, and we turn around and we walk out the door, and the door closes behind us and it's locked, and our escort's gone. "Where'd our escort go, Bruce?" He goes, "I don't know." So we walked out into the main deal, and all of the prisoners are still in their cells, so there's only one door that's open, and it leads out into the big yard where they all get to go out for however long they get to go outside. And we head out there thinking, well, it's the only open door, so that must be where our escort went. We walk out into this yard and no escort. And then all of a sudden we hear a bell, and here comes all the prisoners coming out. So we're in this yard with the guys that we just got told would like to kill us just so they could be popular. So I back us up against the wall so nobody could get behind us. And I kind of looked over at Bruce for a second. I said, "Hey, give me a screwdriver." You know, know, I need a weapon. You know, give me a screwdriver. So he hands me something. I grab it and I look at it. I got a pencil. I said, Bruce, I don't want to write him a letter. I want a screwdriver. He goes, you can have the pencil. Thanks, Bruce. But one of those times in that prison, we were walking through, they were taking us into a wing, and we go in, and I said, Bruce, don't look now, but those guys are checking you out. He'd smile, and he'd say, I think they're checking you out. I'm going to miss him. I've had a lot of fun with him. I'm a very lucky uncle to have been able to spend the time I've been able to spend with a nephew. And as long as I live, I will always remember the good times that we had together, the times in Hawaii, all the times he played little pranks on me, and I'll always remember the word He-Man. Thank you very much for coming.